So the story of the Moscow Mule is probably my favorite story when it comes to the history of booze and cocktails in America. One of the reasons is that it's one of the first times we really start seeing cocktails used as a marketing device for moving spirits. The other reason is we start seeing the takeover of this immigrant spirit, which is vodka, which had been almost non-existent prior to the 1940s. There had been a few bartenders who had tried to use it, and it just never really took off. But what we start off with is three key characters. Start off with Jack Morgan, John Martin, and Ogeline Schmidt. Jack Morgan was the owner of a restaurant in Hollywood, California, known as the Cock and Bull. He was desperate to really try to start moving his English-style ginger beer, which just wasn't taking off at all. And he was commiserating with his friend John Martin, who also had just acquired the rights to the Smirnoff brand of vodka. And up to that point in time, they had really been selling vodka as white whiskey, just whiskey that was tasteless and odorless, which obviously today would be entirely illegal to do. But in the 1940s, yeah, who cares? And then Ogeline Schmidt, who, depending on which version of the story you believe, was dating Jack Morgan, but who had also recently just acquired a copper goods company from her father. And she was also struggling because she wasn't selling a ton of copper mugs and copper goods, and it was definitely on the downswing for the company. So the three of them are sitting around in a bar, commiserating, not being able to move their individual products, and they decided to combine them to create what we now know as the Moscow Mule. We're not really sure where the name of the Moscow Mule comes from. Obviously it sounds good, it's got a nice alliteration to it. My guess, if I were to make a guess, is that it stems from the fact that with a mule, they were paying an homage to a buck style drink. And you can see it on the emblem on the mug is a bucking mule. Also, prior to this, the drink that was incredibly popular in the 1900s, probably from 1900 to 1904, was a drink called the Mammy Taylor. And the Mammy Taylor was what we would now call as a Scotch buck or a Scotch mule, depending on who you are and your level of education in terms of the drinks. But it's really just Scotch and ginger beer. So as the story goes, the three of them are sitting around, they create this drink, but then what? Apparently, at this point in time, there was an invention that had just become very, very popular, and that was the Polaroid camera. This is an aspect to the story that I just learned, and it's probably one of my favorite aspects to it because it's just so silly. The story that I'm familiar with is once they created the drink, John Martin, Jack Morgan would go door to door, from bar to bar, and they would order this drink and they would say, why aren't you serving this drink? And then somebody would taste it, and then all of a sudden they'd start serving the drink, which might be a little overly simplistic. In researching this story again, just to make sure that I had the facts correct, I came across this fantastic little video of John Martin really talking about how the Moscow Mule came to be. And what they did was they took a photo of the Moscow Mule with the Polaroid camera, and then they would travel to a bar. And at that bar, they would talk to the bartender, and they'd say, hey, can you make me a Moscow Mule? And the bartender would say, what the hell is a Moscow Mule? Because can you imagine, just like today, any bartender and some random customer coming in and asking you for a drink that you've never heard of, you'd probably tell them to shove off. But they would say, do me a favor, make this drink, taste it, see if you like it, and as you're drinking it, I'll take your picture and you can take the pictures home to your wife. And so they would take the picture of the bartender, leave them a picture, but then take another one. And then they take that second picture and they travel to the next bar and they say, well, why aren't you making this drink? You can see that this bartender is making this drink. They show them the picture and they say, wouldn't you like a picture as well? And so the Polaroid camera, in part with the Moscow Mule, we start seeing like the first iteration of Instagram cocktail photos, and really pushing for the images of drinks and really helping sell spirits as they are. So as the Moscow Mule grew in popularity across LA, it caught on across California and across America, and subsequently across the rest of the world. And from that day forward, vodka had been the #1 selling spirit in the world. Unfortunately, in doing research for this, the only person that I couldn't find very much information about was Oeschlein Schmidt. Which is, I mean, that's a bummer, because to me, she's probably one of potentially the most interesting aspect of this story, as we don't really know too much about her. We don't know if she was actually dating Jack Morgan at the time. We hear that she has inherited her father's copper goods company, which at one point in time was supposedly doing really, really well, but due to a downturn in the economy just stopped. Also, the copper cups is the one thing now that everybody really latches onto, at least in terms of guests. When they see it walking across a restaurant floor or a bar top, they just look at them and they say, yeah, I want one of those. So unfortunately, I don't know very much about Oeschlein Schmidt, and I'd really like to. So if anybody out there knows anything, which I'm sure someone does, please hit me up and let me know. Hey y'all, my name is Chris Sinclair. I own and operate a bottle shop in Sacramento, California. If you like this video, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and follow us as we jump down the rabbit hole and explore more stories of booze and the history of bar culture here in America. Thanks for watching.